Choose County Care, a health plan built around your family. Pregnant members and moms get extra benefits with County Care, like a free car seat, a portable crib, and Visa cash rewards for your annual checkup. If someone in your family gets sick or hurt, urgent care is covered too. No ifs, ands, or ouch about it. County Care is a health plan built around you. Learn more at countycare.com or call 312-864-8200. County Care is open to all Cook County residents enrolled through Health Choice Illinois. The County Care Visa Rewards program cannot be used for the purchase of alcohol, tobacco, firearms, or gambling.
We all crave something new. At Hertz, new is what we're all about. New adventures, new experiences. When you
3, 4, 5. Good. All right. Thank you.
all that wonderful newness, all with no strings attached. So go on, book your new car fling at Hertz.com. Your old car at home never has to know.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I know it's been a very busy several weeks, so thank you for your patience.
Testing. Okay, there we go. Craig, are you ready?
Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
As you probably are well aware, FBI Director Kash Patel has tweeted out that he's on his way to Chicago now to save Chicago. Could we get your thoughts on that? And if you could also just brief us on the latest that you know about where the National Guard is and where they may be warming up.
Well, Kash is coming here to really enjoy the city of Chicago and spend money, and I strongly encourage him to spend as much as he possibly can. You know, the city of Chicago has been voted yet again the best big city in America, and he gets to get a front row seat to experience that himself. Our economy continues to grow despite the cuts that the Trump administration is putting forward. You know, as far as what we are hearing, the National Guard, first of all, it's illegal, unconstitutional, it's dangerous, it's wrong. This is not about deportation. This is not about safety for this president. This is about authoritarianism. It's about stoking fear. It's about breaking the Constitution that would give him that much more control over our American cities. We have not heard directly, of course, from the president or his administration. And, you know, my expectation is that regardless of what this administration is doing, I'm going to remain firm and committed in protecting the rights and the civility of our nation, and we'll start right here in Chicago.
Is there any intelligence that you're hearing, not directly from the administration? Obviously, they're not talking to you, but I mean, have you gotten any inside intel about, you know, where the Texas National Guard went? They flew out last night. They arrived somewhere. And what about the Illinois National Guard and as to when they might be called up?
Right. So we do know that much like what we've seen in other parts of the country, there's a process that the National Guard goes through before they're actually released into the streets of Chicago or anywhere, you know. But what's really disturbing about all of this is that the National Guard, they have no policing authority or any policing powers. It's not what they're trained to do. And so, you know, the intel that we have received, obviously, is that this president is determined to federalize the National Guard and to occupy our cities with the military. It's unconscionable, it's unthinkable, but this is America today, and we're going to do everything in our power to ensure that our democracy is ultimately protected.
Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
Your executive order a few weeks ago urged federal law enforcement to not wear masks and present other identifying information. As that seems to continue to be flouted, is there anything that your administration can do to enforce those suggestions and ensure that residents know that the masked people that are showing up are actually maybe federal officials versus someone else? Well,
First of all, residents of Chicago will know that if they're in a mask and they're disguising, that is not a local police officer. Our officers are very much identifiable. They don't wear masks. They're here to serve and to protect our residents in our communities. You know, look, the executive order was designed to challenge the federal government to engage at a local level with the same level of accountability that we expect from law enforcement. This, again, is a further demonstration of this president's unwillingness to cooperate with mayors. And quite frankly, it shows his lack of understanding of how you build trust within communities and law enforcement. In fact, this president has done more to disrupt, interrupt the relationship between local law enforcement and law enforcement in general with the community. That's not how we create safe communities. Are there other things that we're looking at? Absolutely. Are we going to make sure that we do our part as a local law enforcement to continue to engage in constitutional policing and building those relationships so that we can continue to drive violence down? Absolutely.
And on your
William, can you get off the phone? William?
And on your executive order yesterday, if they, I know that it was mentioned that you will take people to court if federal officials violate that executive order, but is there any thought that if they do violate it, that there could be more extreme responses, such as directing CPD to intervene and to get federal officials off of those
Well, first of
properties?
all, if they violate our local ordinance, this would be a criminal and a civil offense. And yes, we're going to see people in court, right? As far as other authority that allows for us to be able to enforce this ordinance, we're exploring.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
How are you?
Wonderful. You all did a wonderful job last night. Shout out to Brandis. Yep.
Thank you for coming on the show. We
course.
appreciate it. After Superintendent Snelling's press conference, I wanted to ask you to clarify the sort of the rules of engagement for Chicago police when there's an immigration enforcement activity and the police are called. Back in August, at the end of August, Superintendent Snelling said that when the police department gets those calls, they will send a supervisor to the scene to sort of assess whether there's a public safety threat. And if there is, then officers will be dispatched. Is it your understanding that that policy was followed on Saturday, and is that policy still in effect?
Well, when the police department was called to arrive on the scene, they did. As I indicated yesterday, whenever a 911 call is dispatched to the local commanders, our local law enforcement shows up to do what they do, which is to serve and to protect the peace. The protocol that we put in place was necessary to reassure people that we are following the local ordinance while also making sure that we are fully assessing the circumstances which can ultimately lead to a full determination. That protocol is still in place, and in fact, we saw it on display this Saturday. You know, what's disturbing about all of this is the fact that you had the federal government unleashing tear gas against police officers. I believe it was more than 24 officers were impacted. This is unconscionable. The President of the United States of America is literally pitting law enforcement against law enforcement. That's not the way it's supposed to be. So that's why we had to put this clear protocol in place so that everybody knows that when our police department shows up, their first job is to make sure that that scene is protected and people are being serviced. In the event that scene begins to become clear that this is an ICE operation, obviously, without a criminal warrant, our local law enforcement will not dub as federal ICE agents.
Tonight, the Cubs are taking on the Brewers. Come on, Cubs. And, of course, the marathon is not too far away.
Yeah.
Will the city be making changes to its security plans for the marathon in particular, given the looming deployment of National Guard troops and the continuing ICE strike team operations?
Yeah, thank you for that question. The first part of it, was a little triggering, but look, we hold large-scale events in our city all the time, and we do it better than anyone else, right? And so our counterintelligence, our chief DeVries does an excellent job communicating with our chief of patrol as well as our chief of detectives. All of that is funneled up to Superintendent Snelling to ensure that anything that we see or hear that is coming through the different channels in which we investigate, that we are maximizing safety and security. So I feel strongly about our ability to be able to hold large-scale events, and the strategic security measures that we're putting in place are to ensure that we continue to hold the reputation of hosting large-scale events. The last thing that I'll say is, of course, when the Cubs win tomorrow in Game 3, that we celebrate, with some level of control, because we have to win 2 more games after that. And we've gotten word that roughly 3,000 runners from Mexico have signed up for this marathon. And I want all of them to come. I want them all to come. I believe the best way in which we can demonstrate resistance is not bending the knee to tyranny. Now, what you've heard, though, from our Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, they have spoken very candidly, because I believe the larger point that you're making about safety also is attached to our economy, that what President Trump is doing, he's literally undermining the economic prowess of cities like Chicago, right? I mean, so we're encouraging everyone to get out and celebrate, and our police department working in collaboration with the federal government to ensure that we are keeping people safe.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
A video was circulating this weekend of ICE attempting to detain a person and failing after community members were protesting. They were pulling on the man's arms to try to keep him from being pulled into what appeared to be an unmarked SUV, and they succeeded. You know, ICE drove away. It seems people who are concerned their family members are being, you know, quote, abducted by ICE are more and more taking matters into their own hands. And I'm just wondering, how do you recommend residents act in moments like that where masked agents are attempting to detain a neighbor or a family member? What words of advice do you have for residents in those moments?
Well, first of all, I'm going to ask that people remain calm and, you know, making sure that that we're not provocating any acts of violence. And I understand the turmoil and the level of anxiety that families are experiencing. Now, this is why I'm doing my part to make sure that every single tool that's available to me, we can maximize the protection of all Chicagoans. But my advice, of course, is to make sure that, you know, families are upholding the principles and the values of engaging with civility, while also, you know, recognizing that what the Trump administration is doing to escalate violence in our city and cities across America is just absolutely reprehensible. The fact that he has declared war on the city of Chicago is disconcerting, to say the least. And so I'm asking folks to operate in the long tradition of nonviolence, while also organizing the community to resist and find ways in which we can continue to come together to push back against this tyranny.
And then could you kind of just go over again what you know about where the National Guard is currently located, and, you know, as far as you know, what type of powers does the National Guard have in Chicago, and who are they accountable to in this moment?
Yeah, well, they're accountable to the federal government, right? Once, you know, the president invokes, you know, his, quite frankly, his constitutional authority in that he can federalize. The problem is, of course, he has not met the basic standards in order to be able to do that, and that's what the judge in Oregon indicated and made very clear. So they won't have policing powers. We know that. They can't arrest. So whatever their order is, I believe this is what the judge is asking for. What will be the specific? Make the case first, and then what would be the specific assignments? The president has not proven either of those standards, and this is why, you know, I'm going to remain hopeful that the judge, you know, carries out what the judge did in Oregon, which is this is unconstitutional, it's illegal, and it's dangerous.
Mayor.
Mayor Johnson,
Oh,
Sorry.
you say that 3, 2, 1. What?
We're going to go this way and then we'll come to you, okay?
I'm sorry. Say again.
We're going to go right here and then we'll come to you.
Okay.
Mayor, yesterday, Superintendent Snelling said that after federal agents detonated those chemical munitions, that he did have a conversation with representatives from DHS because it left, you know, CPD officers in harm's way. It is dangerous for the officers. It is also dangerous for the public if those officers are incapacitated. Was anybody from your administration on that call between Superintendent Snelling and DHS? And then as a follow-up, you know, does maybe your deputy mayor for public safety have any line of communication with DHS just to make sure that law enforcement's on the same page and talking to each other and on the same radio communication so they can know what's about to happen?
well, the superintendent is a part of my administration.
I meant like, I'm sorry, yeah, of course, but I guess what I'm asking is like anybody.
Was there
from your
anyone
staff
else?
Yeah, anyone else, yes.
Just the superintendent.
Okay. And then, as a follow-up, the concern there is that law enforcement can't talk to each other. Are you asking Superintendent Snelling to make sure that federal agents and CPD can at least get on the same radio so that CPD can know there's an intention by the feds to, detonate those non-lethal munitions? I mean, people have to talk to each other.
They do. That is the expectation. And here's the thing: we have a practice of doing that. Our local police department has worked with the ATF, the FBI, to get illegal weapons off the streets of Chicago. I mean, I can't repeat this enough. Since I've been in office, we've removed over 24,000 illegal weapons off the streets of Chicago. That's in coordination with the federal government. That's how it should work, right? And, the president not only removed and took away $800 million in cuts to violence prevention, but he cut the ATF budget by 30%. He's defunding law enforcement, the President of the United States of America. He's a defunder. He's a defunder of education, a defunder of public transportation. He's a defunder of access to Medicaid and Medicare. He's defunding jobs. Thousands of black women. It's interesting because he talks about 2 black women who wear red hats, but he's not talking about the thousands of black women that he has fired. So it's not just he has cut off the flow of communication. He has cut off the flow of life. That's what this president has done.
Hey, Mayor.
Hi.
Do you know if National Guard troops are still in the suburbs or have they arrived in the city?
I'm not aware of where they are.
You said earlier that federal agents who violate your executive order would be committing a criminal offense. I want to hear more.
Civil.
Well, I want to hear more about that. Do you think that they should be charged with a crime? How would enforcement on that work for the criminal component?
They should be charged with a crime because it is a crime.
By who?
By the entity that they're violating, the city of Chicago. It's a crime. Here's the thing. Anyone who commits a crime should be charged. I mean, isn't that the basic rule of what they ostensibly refer to as law and order? How do you expect people to respect your ability to carry out law and order if you don't follow it yourself?
So do you want the state's attorney to charge them?
I'm saying that they should be held accountable.
Following up on CPD again, Superintendent Snelling said yesterday that he's in touch with federal authorities on how we're going to work this out and improve communication after the Saturday incidents in Brighton Park. Do you agree that there's a learning lesson there on CPD protocol, and what would that be?
Well, I don't believe it's the issue of the protocol of CPD because we're clear about what we're supposed to do. The issue is the federal government isn't. The federal government is shooting Americans. In the streets of America right now, the federal government is shooting and killing people, unleashing tear gas on families who are walking to the grocery store, trying to get their kids to school. The federal government is out of control. This is one of the most dangerous times in our nation's history. An unhinged, double-minded, simple-minded man who is not being held accountable. And so that's why my superintendent is working so hard to find some lines of communications. Is there anyone in his administration that has any sense? We'll take one. And so this is why I'm in constant communications with my superintendent, because that's how leadership works. You communicate with people. You come up with policies. You hold people accountable. This president is unchecked. Our framers of this Constitution literally put forth measures so that you can always have check and balance to a president. And so, I think the lessons here are being learned every single day, is that if Congress is not going to hold the President of the United States of America accountable, then I will.
And Governor Abbott said last night that the role of his National Guard troops will be to, quote, safeguard ICE officials and other federal officials as they try to enforce the laws. Is that what your intel says too? Do you have any more detail?
The minimum wage in Texas is $7.25. The life expectancy in Texas is lower than Chicago. The governor of Texas spent $200 million that should be going towards raising the minimum wage in Texas, that should be going towards making sure that life expectancy is not cut off. $200 million to bus migrants to cities across America. He dealt with a storm where 700 people died. The governor of Texas should be worrying about Texas. Why he all up in my business? Focus on Texas. Whatever his understanding is, clearly he doesn't understand how to make sure that workers have a livable wage. He doesn't understand how to make sure that life expectancy is not cut off because you're poor. He certainly does not understand how to deal with a crisis where 700 people died in a storm. $200 million. $200 million of Texan tax dollars that went towards busing migrants across this country.
But are you hearing that's what the troops are going to do here?
Thank you.
Mayor Johnson, over the last week, I've literally interacted with over 300,000 plus real Chicagoans who say that it is hate speech for you to evoke the Civil War, to evoke bringing back the Confederacy, to say that law enforcement is a sickness when you yourself have over 150 sworn police officers on your detail. What do you say to these people, and will you ask your 150 sworn police officer CPD detail to stand down if you and your wife Stacy are ever attacked, shot at, or rammed with a protester vehicle?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear that your numbers of interactions have gone down to only 300,000.
Actually, millions, but
well,
personally, I've interacted with over 300,000.
So it went down this week.
No, it's going up.
You just said
yours, by the way.
So
Okay,
300,000.
thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Ed.
So I think it's important to be able to make sure that to the people that you're talking to, though you're talking to less and less people every week, is that they know the truth. Here's what I've said: that the addiction on jails and incarcerations, and the addiction of militarism, it is an evil. And Dr. King made that very clear. He did. And so I believe it's incumbent upon us to make sure that the real Chicagoans or the real people of America, instead of sending billions of dollars overseas, we should be spending it on the people right here in the city of Chicago. That's what we should be doing. The fact of the matter is that the President of the United States of America is spending billions of dollars to secure Argentina while farmers are being undermined by the very investments that he's making in other parts of the world. Doesn't sound like he is prioritizing the American people. The fact that he is spending billions of dollars to crush and to kill children versus making sure that the children on the west and south sides of Chicago actually have access to a well-funded education system shows you that he is not interested in ensuring that the real Chicagoans or the real Americans are actually being invested in.
Well, the real Chicagoans that I talk to, that I communicate with, mostly black and brown, actually, tell me that you don't seem to know the difference between illegal aliens and real Chicago citizens. They feel that you are siding with the illegal aliens over them in their communities. And
Okay.
sadly,
William, let's get to the question.
Let's get to the question. The real question is simply this. I don't know how to make it any more direct. An illegal alien from Nicaragua grabbed a woman on the north side last week.
Question?
Bashed her head into the sidewalk, knocked her unconscious, and raped her. If that had been your wife, Stacy.
Okay, all right, we're not going to answer it. Thank you. Thanks, Blair.
All right.
Would you want ICE to? Would you want ICE to deport her?
All right.
To
Let's move on.
Yes or no?
Let's move on.
Answer the question as a man, not as mayor, but as a man. Would you want
Yeah, thanks. Thank
ICE
you.
to deport that rapist?
All right. Taman?
Okay,
Mayor.
That's the answer. That's the answer for real Chicago.
Mayor, sorry for being late. The traffic's bad. Maybe the feds could help.
You're not blaming me for the traffic, are you, Taman? Watch it. All right.
Can we switch gears for a second? The
Please.
budget, so you've had several press conferences with Governor Pritzker. Presumably, you all have had some time to talk. I'm wondering if you personally lobbied him for your Springfield veto session agenda, and how this budget season rollout's going to go. Are you going to start by identifying savings and efficiencies? Do you want to just leave this blank since the alders are working on kind of their own budget? What's about to happen?
Well, I have a responsibility as the executive of this city to present a budget. I'm going to do that. It's going to be balanced. And what I've said, and I'm committed to doing, I'm going to keep to my word, is that I'm going to present a budget that challenges the ultra-rich to pay their fair share in taxes. I'm going to challenge that. Our corporations, particularly those who have received tax cuts from the president, have to put more skin in the game. Look, the president's cuts are real. He's cutting our public education system. He's cutting off our public transportation investments. He's literally withholding over almost $2 billion for the south side of Chicago. We fought 50 years to get that done. We got it done in my time as mayor. And now he's withholding those dollars. Every single area where descendants of slaves have fought for accommodations by the government, that's what he's attacking. Education, cuts to education, cuts to transportation, cuts to health care, cuts to jobs. I mean, literally every area. And so my budget will have to address the very cuts that are coming from the federal government. And that's why, I have worked collaboratively with multiple industries and entities, whether it's the business community, which by the way, the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, they're recognizing the economic comeback of Chicago and how Trump's cuts are hurting that. And so that's why this budget that I'm going to put forth is going to have some considerations from every person who has contributed to this work, that we will have to find some ways in which we can make government more productive. There are some duplicate of services that are happening that we can better streamline. And yes, by the way, have I had conversations with the governor around progressive revenue? Of course I have. I met with the Speaker of the House, the Senate President. They know that we're going to have to do something to stand up to Trump's cuts. They know we're going to have to do something. I've been calling for progressive revenue long before I've been mayor of the city of Chicago. It's time for Democrats to stand up against the cuts that Trump has proposed. And it's going to require all of us to roll up our sleeves to ensure that we're protecting working people.
I guess, Mayor, we're all just waiting for you to be specific about what is progressive revenue.
I mean, Taman, you know what progressive revenue is. Listen, the governor spent his own money for progressive income tax. Everybody knows, of which 84% of black folks.
Have that. We have a graduated income tax.
But your question was, Taman, respectfully, your question was, what are the specifics? We know the specifics around progressive revenue. There's no secret here. And all I'm simply saying, you heard the Speaker of the House. What did the Speaker of the House say? He said we should have a millionaire's tax. He said it. The state of Illinois fought for a progressive income tax. I know they're looking at a digital ad tax. There's no secret around here of where the money is hyper-concentrated. And as Democrats, we're either going to fold to Trump's cuts or we are going to roll him over. And I am saying that as working people, we have to roll over this Trump administration and ensure that we have the revenue to continue to hire people, to continue to educate our children, to continue to make sure that we have good paying jobs, to continue to make sure that we're protecting people's retirement, to make sure that our transportation system is running. Now look, next week I'm going to give my proposal, and the city council will be able to debate it. And we need the state of Illinois to work with us, labor, the business community to ensure that we're driving the revenue that's necessary to continue to grow our economy and keep our people safe.
Those things you're describing are at best a year off, maybe more. A progressive income tax, right? It has to change the Constitution. State sales tax, or extending the sales tax to services, has to be approved, and then it would take a while to implement and bring in. Is there anything in this veto session that you want the state to do to help the city's budget?
We have to address transportation, I believe, in the veto session. Now, there are some people who believe that, you know, it still could be tough. I've had conversations with elected leaders. I've made my expectations clear that we have to secure the revenue that's needed to make sure that our transportation system can continue to grow. We had an 11% increase in ridership, 300 million people riding our trains and our buses. The economic prowess of our local transportation system impacts the entire region. So this is not just simply about the revenue to protect our public transportation system. This is about revenue that allows for our economy to grow. And the way our economy grows is that you have to be able to move around. And so we're going to continue to have those conversations. And look, if something requires more time in order to get it done and to get it right, that just might be par for the course. But one thing that I know for sure, you don't get weary in your well-doing, right? And so this is why these conversations that we're having today, conversations that I provoked 2 years ago, quite frankly, conversations that people have been on the ground fighting for years. It's like what Springfield knows, they didn't discover that because I became mayor. Now, are we pushing and challenging them more because I am mayor? Absolutely. They have to do more. They know that. And the hope is that because we know we have to do better to stave off Trump's cuts, that as Democrats, we can show up in a very proud way to make sure that we're protecting working people.
One of the revenue ideas for the transit fix was a delivery tax, right? On just I think $1.50 was what was proposed in May. I've talked to state leaders since. It seems like it might still be in there, but less than $1.50. Mm-hmm. If that's not approved at the state level, or if they don't approve anything until January, is the city looking to implement its own delivery tax, and could you do that in this year's budget?
Well, I mean, you know, look, I think it's a well thought out proposal, and here's what I've said repeatedly: that on any revenue idea that drives us towards building safer and more affordable communities, on any revenue idea, if the state of Illinois wants to give the city of Chicago and municipalities around the state the authority to be able to engage in these conversations locally, they should do that.
Morning.
Good morning.
So getting back to federalized military intervention in the Chicago area, and given the reporting and the underreporting of the incidents of riotous behavior at the Broadview ICE Center and the ICE raid of South Shore apartment complex overrun by Trinidad Aragua activity, your foundational black constituents want to know how setting them up as collateral damage with the federal authorities furthers in a struggle for fugitive illegal immigrants, furthers your ideal of non-divisive black and brown coalition.
Donald Trump declared war on Chicago. That's what he did. What the Trump administration is doing is intentionally fomenting chaos. They're doing that on purpose because this president doesn't respect the rule of law, and he certainly doesn't respect working people. Now look, Black Hawk helicopters landing on top of apartment buildings, that's a choice and a decision that the President of the United States of America made. Those are his actions. The federal government sending in ICE, which, by the way, has a budget that only compares to the United States military and China's military.
But blacks are getting caught up in that.
That's a decision. Well, you're absolutely right. They're being caught up in Trump's war on Chicago. That's what this is about. It's about Donald Trump and his lack of regard for working people, and particularly black and brown people. And so what am I doing? I'm using every single tool that's available to me to make sure that we protect people, all of Chicago. Donald Trump also said that the money that we're spending for black student success, he doesn't want that. He also said, let's not deliver on the resources for the Red Line extension, which has been a fight for black Southsiders for decades. And we got it done. And he's holding that up. That's what the President of the United States of America is doing, because he clearly has animus towards working people, and particularly black and brown folks. And so I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that we continue to invest in these very communities and that we push back against the militarized occupation of not just our city, but cities across America.
And speaking of FBAs, since we're in the budget season, what is the accounting on the spending for your reparations task force that FBAs have to share the benefits with tethers for?
Yeah, well, we'll do that, right? The task force has been formed. There's $500,000 committed to it, and you know.
How much of that has been spent?
Yeah, we can get that to you. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
And,
those were your two questions, Mark.
And
we got
I was going to also give you a comment. There's I believe that's as we speak. There's a Flips Red dueling Flips Red. Excuse me. A Flips Red press conference going on, so maybe they can enlighten you on troop movements or whatever. Since they're supposed to be in contact with Trump.
Thank you, Mark.
Hi, Mallory with WBBM. Just a question about parents and students. I've spoken with a mother of an undocumented child that is keeping her child home from school, and in a fear of federal agents being in her neighborhood, she's been watching her neighbors, have issues. What is CPS, CTU, and the city doing to kind of make sure that if this is long-term, or longer if we go weeks with federal agents in neighborhoods, how are we ensuring that students are getting to school? Because her child, she's kept her from going. And I just want to hear your response of how do we protect children in this situation that are scared and mothers who are afraid. Is there kind of a longer-term solution or discussion going on that's not just like neighborhood specific?
Mm-hmm. Well, that fear is real, and that's what the president wants. He wants us to be afraid. He does. And you want to know my opinion of why he is so interested in creating fear? Here's what I personally believe. That the President of the United States of America and the handful of the ultra-rich are terrified of black and brown and Asian people having more political power than we've ever had in the history of America. They want those families to be afraid because they see the tides are turning, that you have more conscientious people who understand our collective responsibility one to another. It's why they're banning books. Like, this fear didn't just start with immigration. It's white men who are afraid of people being educated. That's what they're afraid of. It's why they're sowing seeds of division within communities. They're afraid of us uniting. I just want to make this point absolutely clear. Though I understand the fear, I'm asking people not to be afraid with everything inside of you. And here's what we're holding on to. It's why we have put forth these sweeping executive orders to make sure that people know their rights, that they know the role of local law enforcement, that we have put forth another executive order to prevent these individuals from staging on public spaces, and particularly our schools and our parks and our libraries, right? And as a part of a long-term strategy, will we have to look at other measures to make sure that families feel absolutely secure and safe? You better believe it.
And then could you just comment on the Chicago firefighters contract being in committee today? and how important it is for the city to keep moving forward on these important steps to, get what Chicagoans workers deserve.
Yeah, look, I've said from the very beginning that we have to make sure that we look out for the working people of this city, and our first responders are at the tip of the spear of every single challenge that many residents are experiencing right now. And from the teachers to security guards to other public employees to law enforcement to our 911 dispatchers, right? We've settled all of these contracts. Now, look, there's more work to be done. Like, we really do have some challenges in our city around equity. And I do believe that we have to work harder, and I'm going to do that. I'm working with our Department of Human Resources to ensure that we're creating more opportunities for the very communities that have been historically left out of these opportunities. It's why we've been very aggressive in terms of making sure that more and more Black and brown folks are signing up in our community colleges. The largest subgroup of enrollees in our community colleges are young Black men. We want them to have the skills that they deserve to be able to take advantage of these different positions, and whether it's firefighters or police officers or educators, we want to make sure that these good paying jobs, bus operators, train operators, that we are creating, that our people have access to them. And so, the contract is something that we worked hard on and settling. What other administrations endured, I've worked hard to, try to settle this. And, the hope is that the city council recognizes the value of what we've accomplished and the things that we have to continue to build towards. That's why we have future and further negotiations.
Mayor, good morning.
Good
Lexi
morning.
Suter, Channel 5.
Yeah.
Back to the National Guard. To your knowledge, when will we see them in Chicago? Where will they be positioned? And what exactly is their task?
Yeah, those are all great questions, and some of your other colleagues brought those same questions up. I believe that's, from what I understand, the judge had the same questions and gave the federal government 48 hours to be able to respond, because none of that has been made clear. I mean, this is what is so difficult about this moment, is that you have an administration that is just refusing to cooperate with the local authority. And here's the thing, I want to just emphasize this again. Again, the framers of our Constitution understood the value of local control. They understood it. Here's the thing, Republicans understand that too. They just don't want to apply it in this particular situation because, as I said to your previous colleague, when you look at the local leadership across this country and you see the diversity of the leadership, these are the very cities that this president has declared war on. We're built different in Chicago. We're built different. And this struggle has not been easy. But anything worth fighting for is worth struggling for. That's what this moment is calling for. So no, they have not communicated. None of those things have been made clear. But one thing that I can tell you that is clear, that we're going to hold this administration accountable. And I'm going to use every single tool that's available to me to protect every single resident of this beautiful city.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi. She said, I don't need no mic.
Have you been in touch at all with any mayors from Republican cities, maybe mayors from the Illinois Municipal League, the Metropolitan Mayors Caucus, about the National Guard coming? Mm-hmm. And if not, what would you say?
I have. So I'm a part of the U.S. Conference of Mayors leadership team. And the conference was just held a couple of weeks ago while I was in D.C., and the number of Republican mayors and Democratic mayors that are part of this conference, here's one thing that they understand, is that local government is responsible to carry out the mandates, if you will, that come from the federal government. And this is why it's so disheartening that this president is refusing to communicate with mayors. The continent is built on cities. Our economy is built on cities. And I'm in regular conversation with our leadership of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the African American Mayors Association, the Democratic Mayors Caucus, our local mayors here. The hell that this president has unleashed on cities like Broadview and Franklin Park shows he has no respect and a complete disregard for local politicians. But we are the ones that the residents come to every day, like your colleague just asked. How do we mitigate the fear that people are experiencing? How do we make sure that children can get to schools and workers can get to their workplace without the fear of being kidnapped? We have to deal with that. And this is why I'm using every single tool that's available to me. And I can tell you this, you know, these mayors associations, they reach out to me on a regular basis and they continue to ask, what can we do? That's why you're seeing more of their voices being lifted up. It's why, you know, I had a conversation last week with the mayor of Portland. Keith is doing a great job there. He's, you know, old enough to be my brother, my big brother. But what Mayor Wilson is dealing with in Portland is not that much different than what Mayor Bass is dealing with. And so that's why it's incumbent upon all of us to come together to push back against this tyrant.
Does the President Trump is talking about enacting the Insurrection Act. Does that change all of what you've been talking about? Does that elevate it somehow? Does that do you adjust how you approach this?
Well, look, it's a very good question. These are unprecedented times, and you're talking about an individual who incited an insurrection, and his fixation on disrupting this democracy it's so outrageous. Donald Trump, he's a brittle man, incredibly fragile, and that weakness of insecurity has created a great deal of rage. I am a mayor, but I'm also a Christian. I pray for Donald Trump, his soul. He's lost. And that's why it's important that we help find a way to protect our democracy and our humanity. That's what I'm motivated by. Not some brittle, insecure human being who has expressed a degree of lawlessness that would make Vladimir Putin blush. We're Chicago. We're going to stand strong. Thank you all.